All right, let's move on. It's Running for the Roses here. Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to our show wherever you find your podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Recently just launched a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that, posting full show, posting some clips as well. YouTube.com/Running for the Roses CFB. All right, let's get to a conference that we're both pretty high on. Lucas and I, big time Big Ten fans. Big Ten a couple weeks ago announced their scheduling model for the future, at least through 2025. Obviously, you have USC, and UCLA entering the league this year. They introduced a flex protect scheduling model. I'm reading here from the Big Ten infographic. Schools have protected opponents that will be played annually beyond the 2025 season, but they also have two play opponents that will be played both home and away in 2024 and 2025. So essentially, the Big Ten's going to a 3-6-6 model, basically.
Mm-hmm.
In a 2-year stretch, you're going to play 3 teams twice. You're going to play the other 12 teams once, right? Rotating. But instead of, when we did this exercise, Lucas, we gave everyone 3 protected opponents that you will play annually, basically. The Big Ten, I thought, did a smart move, and they said, well, it doesn't make sense to give every team 3 protected opponents, right? If one team only has, if you're Northwestern and you only have really one protected game that you care about, that's Illinois, why should you be forced to play 2 more opponents that you really don't care about, right? If you're Penn State and you don't have one, real specific annual heated rival, why should you be forced to play 3 protected opponents every year? So some teams have 3 protected opponents, right? Iowa, for example.
Yep.
Iowa has Minnesota, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and I believe that's who we gave them in our show,
Mm-hmm.
right? Iowa is, by my count, the only team to have 3 protected opponents that they'll play annually every year beyond 2025. Some teams have 2, right? Michigan has Michigan State and Ohio State. That makes total sense, right? Minnesota has Iowa and Wisconsin. Wisconsin has Iowa and Minnesota. That makes a ton of sense, right? Penn State, like I said, they have none,
Yeah.
right? So for their 2-year scheduling block, they'll play Michigan State, Rutgers, and USC twice. So it's a really smart system. I think it's pretty fair. It's pretty balanced. What are your kind of impressions on what the Big Ten did?
I love it. I think they went with maybe the more complicated way to do it, but I think one that, like, it's Flex Protect Plus, which sounds like a
I forgot the plus. Sorry.
401k that I just opened like 2 days ago. But I think it's smart. Like we were talking before, I think it does the one thing, it preserves your primary rivalries. It doesn't shoehorn any, especially with teams we were talking about when we did our scheduling pod, which if y'all want to go back to listen to see how accurate we were, feel free to go ahead. Like you didn't shoehorn like made up rivalries with USC, UCLA, even Rutgers and Maryland. Like we weren't shoehorning them with like Michigan State or Indiana. And I think for like a team like Penn State, yeah, some people could argue you could have maybe given them to Ohio State, but it's also like you already have Ohio State taking on Michigan every year. And one of the priorities of this scheduling format, and this is even from the Big Ten, their 4th bullet point, was to balance and maximization of television inventory every season. So it allows you to keep schools like Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, your biggest brands with slots open. So on a 2-year basis, you can make as many marquee matchups as you want without shoehorning. And also, it allows better flexibility so that teams aren't traveling west 2 times a year. And also, USC and UCLA aren't making like 4 or 5 trips into the Eastern time zone every single season. So I think it accomplishes a lot. I would say it was probably the best they could have done. Like I said, especially with teams like Wisconsin, for example, I said they only really have 2 true rivals that I think the fan base wants to play. And I'm excited that that's a rotating one. So, for example, if you have spots open, you're going to be able to play those teams more than twice over a 4-year span. There's going to be some teams you're going to be playing 3 times. And I think that's also exciting. It can increase really good matchups. And for example, if you have a team from the bottom, like maybe a Nebraska, gets back to where they were, you can change the matchups that they have on a bi-yearly basis. Like, hey, like they're really good now. Maybe we should put them with Ohio State or get a game with USC or Penn State or something like that to get more matchups. Or if you have a team that goes down, like for instance, we've seen Michigan State go from 11 wins to 5 wins last year. If they go on that downtrend, you can maybe rotate more easier games and things like that for them. So I think it accomplishes a lot. And I think it was creative. It just wasn't like a standard 3-6-6. I think it very innovative, and I'm really, really excited because I thought the schedules that came out, much like the SECs, um, it was just so awesome to see all these matchups. And you're going to have, like you said, 2, 3, 4 marquee matchups almost every week, more than likely with this schedule.
Yeah, if you look at the teams that only have one protected opponent as of now, right? USC only has one, they have UCLA. Ohio State only has one, they have Michigan. Nebraska only has one, they have Iowa. Northwestern only has one, they have Illinois. Rutgers only has one, they have Maryland. So if you're thinking about, Penn State has none. Michigan State only has one, it's Michigan. So if you're thinking about, I mean, you have two play opponent slots, right, beyond 2025 for USC, UCLA, Ohio State. Maybe it's Ohio State, USC are going to play twice in 26 and 27, right? Maybe it's Nebraska and Ohio State are going to play twice in 26, 27, right? So I really did think that they did a really nice job of keeping the traditions of, Illinois, Northwestern are going to play, right? You have UCLA and USC, that was an obvious one, right? Iowa keeps their three kind of main protected opponents, right? Indiana, Purdue stays on, Purdue, Illinois stays on. But again, it gives you that flexibility, and the fact that this is only a 2 year window, right? It's only a 2 year window, right? It's only
Mm-hmm.
24, 25. So you're right. If Illinois breaks through with Brett Bielema, they start winning 9, 10 games, maybe they level up and they get Penn State as one of their protected or their two play opponents, right? Um, maybe it's Wisconsin. Maybe like Luke Fickell has Wisconsin in the playoff in 2024, and they have to play Penn State now as their, like whatever it is. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was not something I saw coming. Like I didn't think, I thought they were going to do a strict 3-6-6, right?
Sure.
Here are your three protected ones. We're going to force Penn State, Maryland on you. We're going to force Michigan State, Penn State. We're going to force UCLA versus Nebraska, whatever it was. But they didn't do that, right? They decided like let's let these rivalries kind of breathe a little bit and not force anything. And I thought that was smart. What did you think about Wisconsin's 2024 2025 schedule here? So Wisconsin has Iowa. They have 5 home games: Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Nebraska, USC,
Yeah.
Indiana, Minnesota, Penn State, Purdue. It's fun to see some of these new matchups, right? It's fun to see Wisconsin playing USC. It's fun to see them playing, a Penn State, an Indiana, Maryland. What are your thoughts on what the Badgers got?
I'm all for it. I think it's definitely going to be a challenge. I know there's a lot of talk about, the end of the East West divisions and how teams from the East are going to benefit and how that could be harmful from teams to the West. I think both sides are a little overblown, but that's a different discussion for a different podcast. But um, I love it. I mean, like I said, I was super excited. The only two teams I want to play yearly or that I care to play every single year is Iowa and Minnesota. Minnesota, that's obviously the longest rivalry in FBS, I believe, just tenured wise. It's been played over 120 times. And then against Iowa, there's just been some of my favorite games growing up as a kid. Were playing Iowa, especially growing up 10 minutes from that damn state. I had it was a lot of budding rivalries with some friends and even family and things like that. But I think it's amazing. I think I hate the fact that like this year, for example, Ohio State is coming to Camp Randall. It's the first time they're playing there in 7 years. Like, I didn't like the fact that it wasn't as bad as the SEC. You were going maybe 3, 4 years between opponents, but growing, this reminds me of schedules like when I was a kid, like when you basically played everybody in your league almost every year. And I think it's ultimately better than what the division schedule was. And the fact that you can now say, hey, in 2024, you're going to have Alabama, Penn State, Minnesota play at home. You could go on the road to USC. They're going to be coming to Camp Randall in 2025. I believe, along with Michigan State and Ohio State. Like, it's a ton of fun. I'm really, really excited about it. Yes, it might not benefit Wisconsin as much not playing in the West Division. I don't care.
Right.
With the 12-team playoff, that's just not going to matter as much. I think you can get through, with two, maybe three losses on a schedule like this and still be in play for a playoff spot. So I love it. I think it's going to be awesome. I'm very happy that I'm still a season ticket holder because this was a big reason. I wanted to be able to go to marquee matchups and not have to pay secondary market. So I love it. I think it's amazing. I'm excited that we get USC their first 2 years in the Big Ten. Obviously, our buddy, we have a buddy that is
Yeah,
a
Josh.
very, very close associate with USC, and loves them. So excited to have him come to Madison for the first time, and maybe me potentially make a trip out to LA next year to see them play at the Coliseum.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned some of the West teams. A couple West teams really difficult schedules in 2024. Illinois has to go at Ohio State, at USC. They host Michigan. Iowa also has to go at Ohio State, at USC. They host Wisconsin, UCLA, Nebraska. Indiana, kind of on the flip side, they only have 4 away games. They do not play USC, Michigan, or Ohio State in 2024. So look out for the Hoosiers. If Tom Allen can get it going, can get some momentum, Indiana sets up nicely to potentially do well in the conference that year. Michigan has to play at Ohio State, at USC in 2024. They host Wisconsin, they host UCLA and Minnesota, among others. Just looking around here, you look at UCLA and USC, their first year in the league. USC's away games: Maryland, Northwestern, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA. Home games: Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin. USC probably has to love getting Michigan, Iowa, and Wisconsin at home. You want to talk about 3 fan
Oh,
bases that will travel, especially if it's in the later part of the season. UCLA, they have 4 away games. They go to Indiana, Iowa, Michigan. We do get our Rutgers UCLA game. That was a game that, like, when UCLA joined the league, remember, it was like, how are they going to go from LA to Piscataway? Like, that's nuts. What are we doing? Like, and then they host Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, and USC. I'll tell you what, the UCLA Northwestern game at the Rose Bowl might set attendance for the lowest Power Five versus Power Five. There might be about six
oh,
thousand people, especially if it's like late September. Early. There might be about 6,000 people in that stadium.
yeah. Then again, it'll be the first time Northwestern's playing in the Rose Bowl since like 1994 or 95 when they went way
I
back
can't
in the
wait for
day.
all the I can't wait for all the jokes to be like this team making their Minnesota going to the Rose Bowl for the first time since the 40s or what, like whatever it
It's
is.
true. It's true. Uh, so no, it's funny. And you mentioned the Piscataway thing. Yeah, they put that as a two-way opponent. So they'll be playing Rutgers both in 24 and 25. But also love the fact that they penciled in USC and Penn State for the first 2 years. That just has prime time, like white out in Happy Valley, and then probably a really, really awesome crowd. You mentioned, like, Nebraska fans, Wisconsin fans, Penn State fans coming out to LA. I think they'll have a very big presence at the Coliseum as well, when that game gets played too.
Yeah, I bet you for every Big Ten fan probably has those LA games penciled in. I don't know when the Big Ten will release the dates. I'm guessing every Big Ten fan wants to go to LA in like November.
Yes.
Like they're hoping somehow USC and UCLA get like 7 home games in the month of November. Just like I'm sure like USC is hoping to go to play Penn State in September or early October, or they're hoping to go to play Maryland or Purdue earlier in the season. It'll be interesting. I think the takeaway from both the Big Ten and the SEC is like we finally get a little bit of juice with these conferences.
That one. So I am good to go.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Running for the Roses. I'm Ryan Bafaloukos, Lucas Rohde.